All right, in this video demonstration, we're going to do a number of things with DHCP. The first thing we're going to do is go to server A and create a new scope. And if I click on Start Administrative Tools, we'll notice that, wait a minute, I don't have the DHCP snap-in. Well, that means that I need to actually install the DHCP role on this server. So I'm going to go ahead and click in Server Manager, click Add Roles, select the DHCP server checkbox, say next, next again, and I'm not going to go through the wizard. I did this on a previous video. I went through the wizard in the lab prior to this one, so I'm just going to go ahead and go right to the confirmation to get this installed. Say install. Alright, the DHCP server service is installed, the role is there. Do close out of Server Manager. Now we're going to open up our DHCP snap-in from the Start menu under Administrative Tools. Maximize my window here, give myself a little real estate. Double click my server name, go under IPv4, and we're going to right click on IPv4 and create a brand new scope. And the lab calls for just a name of my choosing, so I'll just call this John Demo Scope. I could provide a description if I wanted to, but not going to. Say next. And I'm going to, let's see what the lab says, for a scope with the name of your choosing for the second network on the 215.214.213.0/26. Okay, well, my second network number would be, let's see, 215.214.213.129. So the second network number would be 128. But I can't use 128 because that's the actual network number itself. So I'll start off with 129. Then the ending IP address will be 215.214.213.190. That'll be my range, 129 to 190, 191 being the broadcast address. And our length is going to be 26, so 255.255.192. I love how this changes. Whenever we change something here, it'll also change it up there automatically. When I change it up here, it'll automatically change this automatically. Kind of a nice feature. We're going to say next. Exclusions and delay. Let's see here. Do I have an exclusion? Let's see here. Network, default gateway. The first 10 addresses should not be given out. So we are going to exclude the 215.214.213.129, which is the first one, and then all the way through the 10th one that we're not going to use, 215.214.213.138. So there's those 10 IP addresses. Did I miss something? Oh, I put a 214 here. Okay, so 215, 214, 213, and now we're going to add that in there. So we've got that exclusion going. Those will not be handed out in that scope. We'll say next. Lease duration. See if I have a specification on the lease duration. The default lease time, so which is 8 days. We'll leave that as a default. Say next. We're going to configure some additional DHCP scope options now, so we'll say next. And the default gateway is the first available IP address, which is 215.214.213.129. It's our default gateway. Next. For the DNS, or the domain name, the DNS server, we are actually going to specify our last name.local and 62, which is the IP address of server B for the DNS. So we're good to go here. Say next. Win server. I think we are going to use a Win server. Let's see here. No, we're not. We're not going to use a Win server, so we'll just go ahead and say next. For right now, we will come back and configure Wins a little bit later. The scope should not be activated, so we'll just say no, I will not. I will activate the scope later, and say next and finish. Alright, so we've got our scope created. We see that it has this red down arrow showing that it's not activated, and if you ever see a red down arrow, that should be a good clue that you're not handing out IP addresses. The next thing we want to do is configure clients in the scope to use 1.2.3.4 as their Win server and make sure they use the H node. So let's go into our scope options. I'm going to right click scope options and say configure options. And we're going to go all the way down to option 44, I believe it is. There's 44, so it's asking for the Wins NetBIOS name server name, and we're going to specify 1.2.3.4 as the lab calls for our Wins server. So any clients that get an IP address from this DHCP server will use 1.2.3.4 as their Wins server. And we also want to configure HNode for Wins, so we'll do configure options, go all the way down to option number 46. And by default, our hex is 0x, and B node is hex 1, P node is hex 2, M node is hex 4, and then H node is hex 8. So we're going to change this to hex 8 to make sure we're utilizing the proper nodes. And look, as a matter of fact, in the description here, we see there's B node, P node, M node, and H node. So it kind of helps us out and lets us know in the description of which node what we're doing, what hex we should be using. So we're going to say OK to that. So we've got that locked on for the Win server and the node type that they're utilizing. The next thing we want to do is change the lease time of the scope to be from 8 days, the default, to 10 days. So what we're going to do is right-click on the scope itself, go to Properties, and instead of 8 days here, we're going to change that to be 10 days. So now we're using 10 days for our scope time instead of just 8. We're also going to make sure that the DHCP server is only serving clients on the 32 network and not the 172 network. So what we'll do here is right-click on the server name, and look, it says Add Remove Bindings. Select that, and we're going to deselect the 172.16 network because we only want to serve people on the 32 network, and 33 is the IP address, the first one that can be assigned on that network. So we'll say OK, got that knocked out. And the number 5 here was make a reservation for a classmate's smartphone using the last available address in the range. All right, so let's make a new reservation here, and we'll call this classmate smartphone. And the last available address in that range is 190. And I'm going to ask my classmate to get their iPhone out for me real quick. And we're going to go to their settings, and then under settings we'll go to general and go to the About tab, and let's see what they've got here. All right, so 002608, so 000628. No, it was 26, wasn't it? So 0026 0894 D999. Okay. Easy enough. All right, let's go ahead and add that. Say close. And the next one was change the name of the scope to scope it out. So let's right click on our scope, go to properties, and let's change this to scope it out. The last one was change the lease duration to unlimited. Well, let's go back to our scope, go to properties, and our lease duration right now is 10 days. Let's change that to unlimited. Say apply, okay, and we've got that knocked out. That's all we need for this lab.